Hello Matadors, Miss Bellish here. I just wanted to show you the Ed puzzle that I created for Hope is a Thing with Feathers. This will really just help bring you back into the poem before we start annotating. So if you haven't already, go ahead and click the link that's in the memo, or I will post it in the comments as well of this video so that you can go ahead and do that first, because I want you to really just refresh on what the poem's about. And this is a really beautiful video that I found that shows you just that really just rehashes everything that we covered the past few days. So we're going to go ahead and start annotating Hope is the Thing with Feathers by Emily Dickinson once you have completed the Ed puzzle first. So let's look at the first stanza of Hope is a Thing with Feathers. Hope is the thing with feathers. Oops. So hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. In this first stanza, we have the concept that hope is something with feathers. So I can already see these feathers, which when we have a literary device that pertains to the five senses, what is that called? Go ahead, look in your foldable, and then on the count of 3, say it with me. Okay, 1, 2, 3. That's going to be imagery. We can see these feathers. We can see that hope is perched in the soul. And of course, we have hope being compared directly to a bird. And when something's directly compared to something, it's called a metaphor. Okay. And this is a quatrain, as you can tell, since there are 4 lines per stanza. So we have 3 quatrains. Then I'm going to bring you into one other bit of literary, another literary device that I'm seeing here with the line, and sings the tune without the words. There's a specific consonant that's repeated in that line. We have the tune without the words. So that consonant of the T. I'm going to do this in a little bit darker of color. So that's going to be consonants. And never stops at all. Second stanza, or second quatrain. And sweetest in the gale is heard. Now remember, gale means wind. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. So our little bird has all of a sudden confronted a storm. So I'm seeing just lightning in the distance, some crazy imagery here. So sore or severe, awful must be that storm that could abash the little bird. And abash means to embarrass. That kept so many warm. Wow. What I like so much about Emily Dickinson's ability to bring us into this imagery is that she's creating a lot of conflict. We have this first stanza where we come to see hope as a bird, and it's very light. And then in the stanza, we're confronted with this dark imagery of awful things that this bird is confronting in order to just sing their tune. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. So we have, once again, some more beautiful imagery with land, the chillest land. And especially with the word chillest, that's something that I can touch. So I'm going to draw like a little finger, maybe a hand. I've heard it in the chillest land, and yet on the strangest sea. Ooh, look. Repetition of the S sound, which is called, dun, 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 drum roll please, alliteration. Yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. I'm also going to backtrack a little bit because I just noticed I've heard it in. What's it called when we have repetition of a vowel sound? Go ahead, look on your foldable and say it with me in 3, in 2, and 1. Turn and tell your dog, your cat, the next door neighbor, shout out the window. This is called assonance. Now, we have these repetition of sounds, of vowel sounds, of just this S sound. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea. So we know that this bird, aka hope, sings far and wide. We have heard its tune everywhere. This tune of hope. Does that remind you of something else that we may have previously read? And yet never in extremity, so never in this difficulty, it asked a crumb of me. So personally, I would maybe ask for some, like $1 or some razzles if I was going out of my way for someone. I would maybe want some compensation. But this little bird has never even asked for a crumb. It continues to sing its song of hope, regardless of what's going on, regardless of where it is, of the storm that it is weathering. I also, just last thing, want to bring us into the rhyme scheme. So we've done rhyme scheme before, but as a reminder, we annotate each line with an A or a B, depending on what's rhyming. So hope is the thing with feathers, so this last word, feathers. I'm going to put A here. That perches in the soul. Okay, that doesn't rhyme, so I'm going to put a B here. And sings the tune without the words. Now, does feathers, soul, words, these don't rhyme, so I'm going to put a C. And it never stops at all. All, words, soul, feathers. I'm going to put a D there. Do a little bit different of a color. So we know there's not a clear rhyme scheme here, but there is something called iambic tetrameter, which is just that flow, that rhythmic. Hope is the thing with feathers. So that's called the meter. And that's when we just hear that almost ocean wave sound. It's very soothing. So we don't have a rhyme scheme, though, in that first stanza or that first quatrain. So let's look at the second one. And sweetest in the gale is heard. Okay. I'm going to put an A here. Or actually, I'll put a E because it doesn't rhyme with feathers. So E. And sore must be the storm. Heard. No, doesn't rhyme. Without the words. Storm, words, no. Soul, storm, no. Feathers, Storm, no. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put a F. That could have bashed a little bird. Ooh, this one rhymes with heard. So we have E, F. I'm going to go ahead and put an E here because heard rhymes with bird. Warm. Oh, warm rhymes with storm. So I'm going to go ahead and put that F there. Okay. Let's go down. Land. Land doesn't rhyme with anything, so I'm going to put a G. Sea, land. No, nothing rhyming here, so I'm going to put A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. What about extremity? Land, sea, no. So I'm going to put in I, and then me. Astrochroma me. That rhymes with extremity, so I'm going to put an I here. Very interesting stuff here. So I'm going to just pull this out a little bit. So there's no rhyme scheme in the first stanza. There's an EF, EF rhyme scheme in the second stanza. This could also be simplified to just AB, AB. And then in the last stanza, there's no clear rhyme scheme until the end, where there's the I right next to each other. So when we have two lines that rhyme in succession, that's called a couplet. They're like a couple, right? So couplet, because they're right next to each other. So I find the rhyme scheme here to be extremely interesting, and here's why. So the first one, we don't have any clear rhyme scheme. It's really just introducing us to this bird, to this hope. But then in the second stanza, when conflict is introduced, we have a very clear rhyme scheme. And I think it's because Miss Dickinson wants us to notice that, and sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could have bashed the little bird that kept so many warm. Like, how awful must be the things that are dealt with the bird for it to be remotely ruffled. I mean, its feathers are not going to be ruffled by something unless it's extremely severe. Because hope remains regardless of what's going on, regardless of any type of quarantine, perhaps, regardless of any situation, hope continues to sing its song. Because never in any extremity or difficulty will hope ask of anything from us. It just remains as it is.